The jagged edge of the broken wine glass sliced through Aria's palm like a whisper of fate, blood blooming crimson against the white linen tablecloth of the villa's outdoor dinner table. "Mom, I'm gay," she said, her voice cracking like thunder over the Andalusian hills, the words she'd rehearsed 1,000 times in the mirror now spilling out raw and irreversible. Scarlett froze, her fork midway to her mouth, the paella untouched, as if the entire Mediterranean coast had held its breath. In that suspended heartbeat, Aria's heart hammered against her ribs, a wild drumbeat echoing the distant crash of waves against the cliffs below their rented Spanish home. She'd chosen this moment, sunset on their first night in Marbella, the air thick with salt and olive blossoms, because it felt like a bridge between worlds, the American life they'd left behind in Seattle for this sabbatical escape, and the truth she'd buried deeper than the secrets of the Alhambra. But Scarlett's silence stretched like the shadows creeping across the tiled patio, and Aria wondered if she'd just shattered more than glass. Scarlett set her fork down with deliberate slowness, her manicured fingers trembling just enough to betray the storm beneath her composed facade. "Aria," she murmured, her voice a fragile thread woven from years of unspoken grief, "there's something I need to tell you first." The villa in Marbella was Scarlett's idea, a 6-month lease on a crumbling estate perched on the Costa del Sol, far from the rain-slicked streets of Seattle where they'd both suffocated under the weight of routine. Scarlett, a high school literature teacher pushing 50, had sold it to her daughter as a reset, a chance to breathe after Aria's recent college graduation and Scarlett's own messy divorce from Aria's father, a man who'd checked out emotionally years before the papers were signed. Aria, 22, and adrift with a philosophy degree and a barista job that paid for her poetry slams, had agreed because Spain promised reinvention, flamenco rhythms in the bars, endless sangria sunsets, and maybe, just maybe, the courage to live authentically. They'd arrived 2 days ago, jet-lagged and giddy, unpacking in rooms separated by a courtyard fountain that trickled like forgotten lullabies. Aria had spent the afternoon wandering the local market, haggling over figs and almonds, her mind buzzing with the thrill of anonymity. No one here knew her as the girl who'd dated boys in high school to fit in, or the one who'd stolen kisses with Elena in the back of lecture halls, only to ghost her when the fear crept in. Spain felt like permission. Dinner was meant to be celebratory, Scarlett's attempt at authentic paella, saffron thread she'd sourced from a vendor who swore it was from Valencia. The table was set with mismatched china from the villa's pantry, candles flickering against the encroaching dusk. Aria had rehearsed her confession over the clink of ice in her pre-dinner gin and tonic, the alcohol loosening the knot in her chest. When the glass slipped from her hand, nerves, she told herself, it shattered on the stone floor, shards glinting like accusations. And then the words tumbled out. Scarlett's eyes, the same stormy gray as Aria's, widened not in shock, but in recognition, a mirror held up to a pain long interred. She pushed back from the table, her chair scraping like a confession dragged from the grave. "Come inside," she said softly, gesturing toward the open French doors leading to the living room, where the walls were lined with faded tapestries depicting Moorish lovers entwined in eternal dance. "This isn't a conversation for the open air." Aria followed, her cut hand wrapped in a napkin, the sting a welcome distraction from the vertigo in her gut. The villa's interior was a labyrinth of cool tile floors and arched doorways, scented with lemon polish and the faint must of history. They settled on a worn leather sofa facing a fireplace that hadn't seen flames in decades, the silence between them thicker than the velvet curtains drawn against the night. "I should have said something sooner," Scarlett began, her hands clasped in her lap like a prayer she no longer believed in. She was still striking, high cheekbones inherited from her Irish grandmother, hair that fell in waves when not pinned back, a figure softened by time but carried with the grace of someone who'd once danced in smoky jazz clubs. "But I was scared. For you. For me." Aria leaned forward, the napkin dampening with blood. "Scared of what?" "That I'm broken. Different." The words tasted bitter, laced with the resentment she'd nursed since her teens, watching her mother play the perfect widow after the divorce, dating safe, bland men who quoted Hemingway but never understood the fire in Scarlett's eyes. Scarlett shook her head, a sad smile ghosting her lips. "No, darling. Scared that you'd think I was the hypocrite. Because I know exactly what you're feeling. I felt it too, once. The room tilted. Aria's breath caught, a fishhook in her throat. What do you mean? Scarlett rose, crossing to a dusty bookshelf crammed with leather-bound volumes in Spanish she couldn't read. She pulled down a small, ornate box, lacquered wood inlaid with mother-of-pearl, the kind sold to tourists in Granada. Inside lay a stack of yellowed letters, tied with a faded silk ribbon, and a single photograph. Two young women in the 1970s, arms linked on a San Francisco beach, windswept hair and bell-bottoms, laughing into the camera with the unbridled joy of the newly free. "This is me," Scarlett said, tapping the woman on the left, younger, wilder, with a peace sign necklace and eyes alight with rebellion. "And this is Lena. We met at a protest rally in '72. Vietnam. Women's rights." The whole world felt like it was cracking open. Aria took the photo, her fingers tracing the edges as if it could summon ghosts. Scarlett looked happy. Not the polished version who'd raised her alone after the divorce, baking cookies for PTA meetings and cheering at soccer games, but alive, electric. "We were in love," Scarlett continued, sinking back onto the sofa, her voice weaving through the room like smoke. "Deeply, madly. She was an artist, painted murals on abandoned warehouses, dreamed of Paris. I was studying English Lit at Berkeley, quoting Woolf and pretending I wasn't terrified of what it all meant. We shared a tiny apartment in the Haight, cooked terrible vegetarian stews, and made love under posters of Joni Mitchell." Aria's cheeks flushed, not from the details. Her mother spoke of it with the reverence of a lost poem, not prurience, but from the ache of discovery. This was her mother, the woman who taught her to ride a bike and bandage scraped knees, harboring a secret love story that mirrored her own hidden heart. "But Dad," Aria whispered, the photo trembling in her hand. Scarlett's gaze drifted to the window, where the moon now silvered the olive groves. "Your father, Tom, was safe. After Lena. After she left, I shattered. She went to New York for a gallery show and never came back. A letter arrived weeks later. She'd fallen for someone else, needed space to find herself. I was 24, adrift, and the world was whispering that love like ours was a phase, a rebellion, not a life. Tom was in my lit class, kind, steady. We married because it was what you did. I convinced myself it was enough." The confession hung between them, a bridge or a chasm, Aria couldn't tell yet. She reached for her mother's hand, the napkin forgotten, blood smearing faintly on Scarlett's knuckles. "Why hide it? All these years." "Fear, Aria. The same fear that's kept you quiet. In the '70s, it was the law, the church, the neighbors. By the time you came along, it was inertia. I didn't want you to see me as flawed, or worse, to think you had to follow my path of silence." Scarlett's voice broke, tears carving clean paths down her cheeks. "But I see now, I hid because I was ashamed of surviving without her. And in hiding, I made you hide too." Aria pulled her mother into an embrace, the scent of jasmine from the courtyard mingling with the salt of their tears. For the first time, the villa felt less like an escape and more like a reckoning. Outside, the fountain murmured on, oblivious to the truths unearthed. That night, sleep evaded Aria like a skittish cat. She lay in her canopied bed, the photograph propped on her nightstand, Scarlett and Lena gazing out like benevolent specters. The revelation swirled in her mind, her mother's buried love, a parallel to her own tentative steps toward authenticity. By dawn, resolve hardened in her chest. She wouldn't let fear win, not for Scarlett, not for herself. The next morning, over strong coffee and churros from the village bakery, Aria broached the idea. "We should find her. Lena. If she's still alive. You deserve to know." Scarlett paused, her cup halfway to her lips, eyes widening in that familiar mix of terror and thrill. "It's been 50 years, Aria. She could be anywhere. Or nowhere. Then we start somewhere." Aria pulled out her laptop, the screen glowing against the morning light filtering through the villa's shutters. A quick search yielded fragments. Lena Vasquez, artist, San Francisco native, last exhibit in the 90s. An obituary. No, a gallery archive mentioning a retrospective in Barcelona last year. Alive. In Spain. Scarlett's laugh was half sob. Of all places. Fate's got a sense of humor. By noon, they were in the rental car, a zippy Fiat snaking along the coastal highway toward Malaga, then north to Barcelona. The drive was a blur of azure sea and jagged sierras, Scarlett navigating with an old road atlas while Aria blasted Joan Baez from her playlist, the lyrics a haunting echo of their shared ghosts. Conversation flowed in fits and starts, Scarlett recounting stolen weekends with Lena in Big Sur, the way Lena's laugh could chase away fog, Aria confessing her first crush on a debate team captain, the guilt that followed like a shadow. As the sun dipped low over the Pyrenees, Barcelona unfolded before them, gaudy-esque whimsical spires piercing the sky, the Ramblas alive with buskers and flower stalls. They checked into a modest pension near the Gothic Quarter, its rooms echoing with the clamor of street life. That evening, they wandered the Barri Gothic, arm in arm, the city's labyrinthine alleys a metaphor for the paths they'd yet to map. The gallery was called Espai d'Art Contemporani, tucked into a narrow side street off La Rambla. Scarlett had emailed ahead, her message terse, "I'm Scarlett O'Connor. From the hate. I'd like to see Lena's work." The reply was polite, intrigued, "Ms. Vasquez will be in residence tomorrow. 3 p.m. The wait was agony. Aria spent the morning dragging her mother through the Boqueria market, forcing her to sample jamon and fresh oysters, anything to distract from the what-ifs clawing at her insides. Scarlett, usually the unflappable one, fidgeted like a schoolgirl, twisting her silver bracelet, a gift from Tom, now a relic. At 2:45, they stood outside the gallery, a sleek space of white walls and polished concrete contrasting the Baroque chaos outside. Aria squeezed her mother's hand. "Whatever happens, you've already won. By telling me." The door chimed as they entered. The air smelled of turpentine and possibility. A receptionist directed them to the back studio, where light poured through skylights onto canvases in various states of completion, bold strokes of ochre and indigo, figures intertwined in abstract embrace. And there she was, Lena Vasquez, 70 but unbowed, perched on a stool before an easel, her silver hair cropped short, overalls splashed with paint. She turned at their approach, her eyes, dark, luminous, locking onto Scarlett's with the precision of a brushstroke. "Scarlett." Lena's voice was gravelly, laced with the faint lilt of her Mexican heritage. She slid off the stool, wiping her hands on a rag, disbelief etching lines deeper into her face. Scarlett nodded, rooted to the spot. "Lena. It's been a while." The women stared, the years collapsing into that single gaze. Aria hung back, heart pounding, a witness to resurrection. Lena moved first, closing the distance in 3 strides, pulling Scarlett into a hug that was fierce, forgiving. "Dios mío, you look just like I dreamed you would." Over tea in the gallery's tiny cafe, strong black with lemon, the way Lena remembered, stories poured forth like wine uncorked after decades. Lena had indeed left for New York, swept into a whirlwind with a sculptor who'd promised the moon. It ended in flames, as these things do, leaving her to rebuild in Barcelona, where she'd found solace in teaching and her art. No children, no regrets, just a life painted in vivid hues. "I thought of you every solstice," Lena admitted, her hand brushing Scarlett's across the table. "Wondered if you'd found your fire." Scarlett's laugh was watery. "I did. In her." She nodded toward Aria, who blushed under the spotlight. Introductions followed, awkward at first, then warm as Lena regaled Aria with tales of their youth, the time they skinny-dipped in the Pacific at midnight, or argued over Kerouac until dawn. As the afternoon waned, Aria slipped away to give them space, wandering the nearby Cathedral Square where street performers juggled fire. She texted a friend back home, "Mom's past just walked back in. Spain is magic." But beneath the joy simmered unease, a whisper of what this reunion might unearth, the betrayal's time hadn't fully healed. Dinner that night was at Lena's flat, a bohemian area overlooking the port, walls alive with her murals, lovers in eternal orbit, colors bleeding into one another. Over gazpacho and patatas bravas, the conversation turned deeper. Lena spoke of the AIDS crisis in the 80s, friends lost to silence and stigma, Scarlett of raising Arya alone, the ache of half-truths. "You're brave," Lena said to Arya, clinking glasses. "Coming out in a world that still whispers. Your mother taught you that, I think." Arya glanced at Scarlett, whose eyes shone with pride and pain. She did. And more. But as the evening drew to a close, with hugs at the door and promises of tomorrow, Arya caught the shadow in her mother's smile, a flicker of something unresolved. The next day brought the fracture. They were to visit the Picasso Museum, a neutral ground, when Scarlett's phone buzzed, an email from Tom, Arya's father. "Heard you're in Spain. Thinking of visiting. Miss my girls." It was innocuous, a olive branch from the man who'd faded into occasional cards and holidays. But to Scarlett, it was dynamite. In the museum's sunlit courtyard, surrounded by sketches of weeping women, Scarlett confronted it. "What if he comes? What do I say?" "Sorry, Tom, but I've got unfinished business with my ex-lover." Lena, who'd joined them, placed a steadying hand on Scarlett's arm. "You say what you need. No more hiding." But the words ignited old wounds. Arya watched as Scarlett pulled away, her voice rising in a hush that cut deeper than shouts. "Easy for you to say, Lena. You left. You chose freedom. I stayed, built a life on sand." Lena's face crumpled. "I left because I was selfish, Scarlett. Young and scared of settling. But I carried you with me, every canvas, every color." Arya stepped in, mediator by default. "Mom, this isn't about blame. It's about now." But the damage rippled. That afternoon, Scarlett vanished into the city alone, wandering the Barca's labyrinth until dusk. Arya found her on a bench by the fountain of Montjuic, staring at the water as if it held answers. "I betrayed her, didn't I?" Scarlett whispered when Arya sat beside her. "By marrying Tom. By not fighting." "No," Arya said firmly, wrapping an arm around her. "You survived. And now, you get to choose again." The reconciliation came not in grand gestures, but in quiet admissions. Over the following weeks, as summer deepened into golden haze, the three women wove a fragile tapestry. Mornings at Lena's studio, where Arya sketched clumsily under Lena's guidance, capturing Scarlett's profile in charcoal. Afternoons exploring the coast, snorkeling in coves where the water was bluer than regret, picnics under cork oaks where stories flowed freer than the wine. Betrayal surfaced in layers. Lena confessed to sporadic letters she'd written but never sent, postmarked and returned. Scarlett admitted to a journal burned in a fit of rage after the divorce, pages that might have freed her sooner. Arya, too, unraveled, revealing her own flight from Elena, the girlfriend she'd left without a word after college, fearing the vulnerability of love. "You're just like me," Scarlett teased one evening, as they watched Lena teach a street class on watercolor, her laughter ringing over the square. "Running from the good parts." Arya nodded, the truth settling like dust after a storm. But not anymore. The climax crashed on a stormy August night, thunder rumbling like the god's own drama over the Mediterranean. Tom arrived unannounced, his flight delayed but determination not, bearing a bottle of Rioja and a suitcase of what-ifs. He tracked them via a mutual friend, convinced this sabbatical was his chance to mend fences. The villa in Marbella, where they'd returned for the final month, became a pressure cooker. Tom, silver-haired and affable in his khakis, charmed at first, grilling sardines on the patio, regaling Arya with stories of her toddler tantrums. But his eyes lingered on Scarlett with a possessiveness that chafed. Lena had come too, invited for the weekend, her presence a bold stroke on the canvas. Dinner was civil, paella redux, this time with Lena's saffron twist, but tension simmered like the storm clouds gathering offshore. It broke after the plates were cleared, as lightning forked the sky. Tom cornered Scarlett in the kitchen, his voice low and laced with hurt. "Who's she, Scar?" "The one from Barcelona. Some fling to spite me." Scarlett's face paled, but her spine straightened. "Not a fling, Tom. A first love. The one I buried for us." He recoiled as if slapped. "For us. I gave you stability, a child, a home. And I gave you silence," she shot back, tears streaking her face. "I loved you as best I could, as a friend. But it was never whole." Arya burst in, drawn by the raised voices, Lena close behind. The courtyard doors banged open, rain lashing in like judgment. "Dad, stop. This isn't about you." Tom turned, betrayal etching his features. "You knew. And you kept this from me." "Not kept," Arya said, rain mingling with her tears. "Discovered. Mom's truth isn't a weapon, it's her heart." Lena stepped forward, her voice steady amid the gale. "Tom, we all carry ghosts. Let her lay hers to rest." He stormed out into the downpour, suitcase forgotten, the Fiat's engine roaring away toward the airport. The villa echoed with the storm's fury, but inside, a different tempest raged, Scarlett collapsing into Lena's arms, sobs wrenched from decades deep, Arya holding them both, the family she'd always craved reforming in the wreckage. In the aftermath, clarity dawned. Tom called the next day, voice hoarse over the line, "I get it now. Or I'm trying. Be happy, Scar. You both." No grand forgiveness, but a door cracked open, human, imperfect. As September whispered farewells, the women stood on the cliffs above Marbella, wind whipping their hair, the sea a vast, forgiving blue. Scarlett and Lena, hands entwined, spoke of tomorrows, a winter in San Francisco, canvases shared. Arya, backpack slung over one shoulder for her flight back to Seattle, job interviews, poetry readings, felt the pull of her own horizon. "You gave me this," she told her mother, hugging her fierce. The courage to say it out loud. Scarlett pulled back, eyes shining. "We gave each other. And that's the real story." The villa faded in the rear view as Arya drove to the airport, Spain's light gilding the road ahead. Betrayals mended not in perfection, but in persistence, love, in all its jagged forms, a truth worth unearthing, again and again. In the years that followed, letters flew like bridges, Scarlett and Lena splitting time between coasts, their love a slow burn masterpiece exhibited in small galleries, whispers of hate ghosts in every stroke. Arya thrived, publishing chapbooks of verse that sang of hidden hearts, falling into a romance with a barista named Mia, whose laugh echoed Lena's. Tom visited sporadically, awkward brunches evolving into tentative coffees, his apologies unspoken but felt in the space he gave. Spain remained their talisman, a return trip every summer, the villa waiting like an old friend. There, under jasmine vines, they'd toast to survivals, the betrayals that birthed them, the truths that set them free. In the end, it wasn't happily ever after, but wholly, human, scarred, and luminous.